In today's video, I want to talk about stowaways, piracy, smuggling, and other custom-related offenses. So I'll start with the stowaways, and the definition of stowaway is that any person who at any port or place secretes himself or herself in a ship without the consent of the ship owner or the master or any person in charge of the ship and who is on board after that ship has left that port or place is considered a stowaway. Now, the problem of stowaways is an Asian one. During more recent times, stowaways have been regarded as an expensive nuisance, primarily encountered by ships operating in the Third World. Due to rapidly changing economic and political conditions, stowaways have become a problem to ships in all the world's trades, especially Europe's. Traditionally perceived as a shipboard responsibility, stowaways are now seen as a problem, requiring the combined efforts of the terminals, company management, and the ship. Companies must set up procedures and guidelines for dealing with stowaways. Also, in each foreign port, security guards should be hired, with at least one guard being fluent in English. Companies should also arrange to have all empty containers checked and sealed or opened and visually checked just prior to loading. The ship's master must ensure a proper gangway match is maintained at all times. Prior to port entry, all spaces not to be used during cargo operations should be locked and sealed. The crew should be instructed to be aware of anyone suspicious and to report it to the mate or the crewman on watch. As an added precaution, the ship's master should conduct a complete stowaway search at the completion of cargo operations and prior to letting go. Terminal cooperation and awareness is essential as well. First and foremost, the terminal must ensure that the adequate port security measures are in place. One of the most helpful measures the terminal can institute is to require passes for both crew and all shoreside workers entering or leaving the terminal. In addition to controlling the entry to the port, terminal personnel must minimize persons wandering, particularly in the vicinity of empty containers and other cargo in which potential stowaways could conceal themselves. The terminal should also inform the ships entering of recent and present stowaway problems. Despite the best coordinated efforts of the ship, terminal, and steamship company, management determined individuals will occasionally succeed in stowing away. Now, if upon departure from a port you have reason to believe you have stowaways on board, caution must be used in locating the stowaways. As the stowaways are rounded up, take them to a central location and isolate them and interrogate them. Once the initial information has been gathered, you will want to call your company and agent. The agent working with the company should make every effort to expedite the removal of the stowaways from the vessel. Stowaways present numerous headaches, delay, and are very expensive. The company must bear all the expenses of repatriation. Ship's officers may face termination if it is felt that they have failed to exercise due diligence. Lest anyone regard this as a trivial matter, one American flag liner company estimated the cost of handling 5 European stowaways to be around 100,000 US dollars. Recent media coverage of seamen accused of brutal treatment and murder of stowaways have brought their plight to the world's attention, but the problem has been growing steadily for many years. The proliferation of satellite dishes in impoverished countries showing the good life in America, combined with population pressure, collapse in economies, and political repression, has sparked a dramatic increase in stowaway activity and some panicky responses from ship master and crew. One alarming trend has been the increase in the number of stowaways on a given vessel. Traditionally, the stowaway was a lonely, desperate man, but now in groups, including women and children, they are being found. This trend reflects the fact that stowaway or stowing away on a merchant vessel is usually a group effort resulting from shared know-how, bribery, collusion, and hard work. The advanced guards of the stowaways are the prostitutes, stevedores, guards, chandlers, custom officials, and fake jewelry salesmen who flock on board. Master of trading vessels in high-risk countries such as Haiti, Dominican Republic, Colombia, Nicaragua, African countries must hold training sessions for the officers and crew regarding non-crew members in unauthorized areas, the securing of hatches, the maintenance of effective lookouts, the use of disinformation to discourage stowaways, and proper stowaway search procedures before departure. Other techniques for preventing or flushing out stowaways include wireless alarms sounding in the master stateroom when certain hatches or doors are opened, the use of Spanish language placards warning that certain compartments containing poison gases, and the use of tear gas to flush out stowaways. One aspect of the stowaway problem that has eluded the media is the reality that many stowaways are actually criminals in their countries, fleeing legitimate prosecution, and many others exhibit the violence of desperation. The vessel trading high-risk countries should maintain on board a register about the stowaways, and the handling of apprehended stowaways should be rigidly supervised and recorded. The greatest threat from stowaways is not their physical presence, but the grievous consequences of their presence. Fines, delays, emotional stress, and even criminal charges against the crew for mysterious or mistreating stowaways face ship owners who do not implement an effective plan to implement or prevent stowaways from coming on board and to care for the ones that do. Preparedness to deal with stowaways that include security contingency plans. Well, so specific subject areas include an initial risk assessment, which comprises of the stages and thinking involved in the conduct of an initial detailed risk assessment. The legal situation covers in outline the requirement to consider the impact of any security measures on the local laws and legal implications. Security survey is the next stage, is a detailed survey using the findings of the risk assessment as its baseline. This will include the conduct of a survey, the subject areas covered, and the preparation of a report, including conclusions and recommendations. The principle of layered protective measures will cover why the principle of building layers of protection is a fundamental feature of a totally integrated system, and that this principle can equally be applied to cargo and passenger handling facilities. Perimeter protection, including designated restricted areas, detail the absolute requirements for the use of visible perimeter fences, boundaries, and the correct designation of the areas to be protected using control of access and designated restricted areas. Control of access covers the need for the control of access to facilities and specific areas, and how these controls can be efficiently and sensibly implemented without disrupting the commercial function of the vessel. Technical measures are used in support of the protection of the vessel. Security personnel, the selection, recruitment, training, and utilization of personnel are involved. Identification of employees and visitors covering cargo and non-cargo facilities. And finally, the vessel security and contingency plan is a description of the contents of a comprehensive plan covering the aspects mentioned above and the incident response. How to prevent stowaways? Well, you need tighter port security and greater vigilance by the ship staff. Port authorities need to step up as well and implement measures to prevent stowaways from boarding ships. People should be restricted who have access to ships. Only authorized personnel should be accessing ships. Steps should be taken to prevent stowaways hiding inside containers. Containers should be sealed from the outside, or if they are not sealed, they should be checked and then sealed. Some port uses sniffer dogs and human occupancy detector inside the containers, so there is no need to break container seals in that case. Human occupancy detector, if you don't know what it is an infrared detector which measures level of carbon dioxide in an air sample drawn from the container. Level of carbon dioxide will increase with occupancy, and in that case they know that the container is not empty and probably occupied by personnel. On board, you must take some of the measures such as minimum or only one access is given should be given to the ship, and effective gangway watch should be maintained at all times. Person with identity should always be checked, and unauthorized person should be refused access. Gangway should be raised during periods of non-use. All storerooms, mast houses, entrance to accommodation should be locked in accordance with fire and safety regulations. Deck watch should be maintained at all times, and even at anchorage. The deck should be well lit, and even the overside areas should be well lit. Make sure that you check the mooring ropes and anchor cables regularly to deter any stowaway from gaining access. Use a shore watchman if you can get so. So shore watchmen from reputed companies, which can be arranged by the ship's agents and the P&I correspondent. And make sure that the master doesn't display any kind of information about sailing, such as next port or time of sailing, so on and so forth. Here you have to know that additional expenses for shore watchmen and human occupancy detector are actually not covered by the P&I club. The charterer has responsibilities as well to exercise due care and diligence in preventing the stowaways gaining access to vessel by means of secreting themselves in goods or container. Stowaway searches should be carried out prior departure as per company instructions. Divide the vessel into different areas and search for them using all the crew members available. Each area should be searched systematically and simultaneously. Checklist can be used for such searches, and if stowaways are found, immigration authorities should be advised immediately. Logbook entries should be made regarding details of what security arrangements and the time, date, and outcome of stowaway search conducted by the crew as per company instructions. If you discover stowaways, make sure that you follow company guidelines established where more stowaways on board, notify the ship owners and agents, establish identity of each stowaway, establish documents stowaway has in his or her possession. There is a humanitarian obligation to provide maintenance such as food, water, sleeping, accommodation, washing, and toilet facility. It is not an easy situation on board as there will be physical danger to crew or also for acquiring infectious diseases from the stowaways. No matter what, however, the situation should be treated humanely. If more than one stowaway, make sure you keep them separate. Also establish their full name, nationality, address, place of birth, name of and date and place of birth of both parents, details of any documents found. Do not socialize with them and never allow stowaways to escape in port as ships may be fined by the immigration. Do not make them work on the ship even at sea, and make proper logbook entries for the period of stay of stowaways. Take lots of photographs that evidences how the stowaway was treated. For example, if you're giving them food and clothing and shelter, take lots and lots of photographs. Keep your portholes covered so that they cannot see what is going on outside, because if they see a port coming in, they might act rashly, get physical, get violent, try to escape from the ship to reach the nearest port. IMO has come out with some resolutions in the past, and again, stowaway standards have been also incorporated in the FAL Convention, which is the Facilitation of the Maritime Convention, Facilitation of Maritime Traffic Convention rather. And as part of the FAL Convention, you have a separate form for filling out the details of the stowaways once they are found, and that form should be filled with as much details as you can find about the stowaways. Stowaways that are entering a country without the required documents are actually in general illegal immigrants, and decisions on how to deal with such situations are the prerogative of the countries concerned. So stowaway asylum seekers should be treated in compliance with international protection principles set out in relevant treaties. Make sure that you avoid any situations where stowaways are detained permanently on board. So efforts should be made to quickly detect the stowaways on board, and even if they have been detected after sea, then the immediate disembarkation at the nearest port possible should be the priority of the master. In terms of maritime crime, we cover that there are a number of things that we have to think about here and what we mean by maritime crime. So research findings in the past suggest that not all ship owners are at equal risk, and that different types of security measures are appropriate for different types of problems. But a striking finding has been that all too often security is viewed negatively, and many security ideas which are applied to vessels have failed to take account of or have misunderstood altogether the culture of maritime community. Maritime crime must be researched, analyzed, solutions identified, packaged, implemented, and evaluated if a response is to be effective. What is required is an approach that combines both research and application. Maritime security is actually a joint responsibility because threats to shipping are from illicit boarding such as terrorism and hijacking for political reasons, piracy, armed robbery, drug trafficking and other smuggling offences, petty theft and opportunity crime, as well as stowaways and illegal immigrants. A common solution, of course, is to restrict or control access to the ship in port. Do not divulge too much details about the cargo being carried, the next port of destination, the date of departure of the vessel. Maritime carriers can, on their own, can only do so much. Merchant ships or cargo, or merchant ships do not have guns or access to ammunition or any kind of training to deal with maritime crime. So port authorities and governments need to get involved. Maritime carriers can actually develop a contingency planning for emergencies, a checklist. They can allocate security responsibilities to the port authorities and as well as the private operators. They should increase the awareness of threats that a ship faces in different ports, and also give guidance regarding industry guides on drug and piracy. Ports can increase the port security and not rely solely on the vessel and the seafarers protecting their perimeter. Governments can acknowledge and promulgate the threat, increase port security where there is a threat. They must acknowledge that there could be terrorism and hijacking for political reasons. In terms of piracy and armed robbery, they must increase the port security, reporting and response arrangements, determined action to eradicate the problem nationality, acknowledgement of the problem through IMO, awareness of the issue in fighting navies, and cooperative arrangements with states when navy vessels transit high threat areas. In terms of drug traffic and other smuggling offenses, they must enter into any kind of cooperative arrangements with port users, including shipping companies, through Memorandum of Understanding arrangements promulgated by the World Customs Organization. Petty theft and other opportunity crime, well, you must acknowledge that there is a threat in certain ports, and governments should encourage reporting and provide guidance and information if ships suffer from such kind of theft and crime. Stowaways have been discussed already, so I don't want to talk too much about that. So I think that's pretty much it. Maritime piracy is actually has been a growing threat. There have always been pirates, but in today's world, pirates are not relics, but they have advanced weapons. They have access to advanced weapons, fast boats. They can board the ship quickly and carry out serious harm to the ship's crew as well as the cargo. They are armed with modern assault weapons, and they operate in sea lanes that international carriers have to use, and that's why pirates are able to make surprise attacks on unarmed merchantmen and get away with their money, cargo, etc. Today's piracy is actually more of a nuisance to commercial shipping, and it affects maritime traffic in various vital shipping lanes, particularly in the Southeast Asia. A lot of attacks have been taking place on tankers and container ships, etc. So that's pretty much it for me. I thought I'll quickly discuss this because this is a very important topic for senior officers who go for orals, and they are asked questions about stowaways and piracy and smuggling and what kind of measures and responsibilities are shared by the stakeholders that are involved in the maritime industry. So let me know what you thought about this video, and I'll see you soon with my next video. Bye for now.